Good morning, everybody. My name is Hans Møller Petersen, and I'm the General Director of the Danish Agency for Science, Technology and Innovation. I'm going to moderate this morning's plenary session on science for global sustainability challenges for societies. Many share a vision of a society with a green economy where technological and knowledge and science-based solutions to great global challenges are related to natural resources, the environment, energy, climate and food are used to drive growth and employment and to protect nature and the environment. But how do we realize this vision? This question is actually what we're going to discuss this morning, and to take us through some of the questions in this regard, we have succeeded in attracting one of the world's most competent persons in that term. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Lydia Brito, Regional Director for the Sciences in the Latin American and Caribbean region for UNESCO. Lydia Brito has a long and remarkable career. She's a recognized academic promoting sustainable development and community-based management in Africa in general. She holds a PhD in forest science from Colorado State University. Besides being an expert in forestry, she is also an engineer and a university lecturer, researcher, and consultant for Eduardo Mondlane University. From 2000 to 2005, she served as Mozambique's first Minister for Higher Education, Science and Technology. In her homeland, she has also served as advisor for strategic planning and external relations for the mayor of Maputo City. Her areas of expertise range from forestry and development to science, technology, and innovation policies. She has worked with local, national, and international organizations, mainly within technical expertise and political support on good governance issues, energy, higher education, science and technology, and ICT. In addition, she has held several international board memberships and chaired commissions and task teams, such as the UNESCO IHE Governing Board, United Nations University Council, the Advisory Board of the Community Development Carbon Fund, and the Steering Committee for the Program on Sustainable Management of Forests in Africa. With her more than 20 years of experience in this field of forestry, traditional energy, wood science, and technology, Mrs. Brito is truly an expert, and we are very happy to have you with us today. Please give Mrs. Brito a warm welcome.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you very much for this kind of introduction, and I wish I was really that expert of all those things. Look at me more as someone that tried to question what is happening and what we are doing as persons, as communities of practice, as leaders in different parts. So more than an expert, probably what I am is someone that likes to question and constantly learn. I felt that to discuss what science can do for global sustainability continues, in my view, to be a very important topic. I don't think we are there yet, although, as I will show you, we are starting to understand and to move in that direction. But allow me to start by sharing with you how I see the world today so that you can understand then why I propose a few ways up. The first, for me, one of the first characteristics of today's world is globalization. And globalization is not only that we can have now the same gadgets from in any part of the world, or the same companies are everywhere. I think it's more than that. I think globalization, if we frame it in sustainability terms, is really local decisions have global impacts, and global decisions have local impacts. So we are interconnected, and we can't think that by not acting or by acting, we are always changing something global-wise. It also means that it's shared responsibility. So therefore, whatever we do as individuals, as communities, as countries, as the global community, we are impacting a lot of lives around the globe. The other characteristic of today's world, and that has been a word that has come again and again during this conference, is really that we are really living in an uncertainty. And uncertainty, it's not something that we are prepared to face. If we look to our education systems, if we look to our decision-making processes, they are all based in certainty. But we are living in a changing environment, and uncertainty is very important. So clearly, there are things that have to be done to allow us as humans, or to recover probably, our capacity to deal with uncertain times, because we have that in our DNA. But somehow, through education processes, through decision-making processes, through the way we interact, certainty became a very important component of how we behave. But we have to recover that capacity to adjust and to really think in a way that allows us to deal with the changing environment. We also live in the world that is under pressure. And one of the keynote speakers 2 days ago said, well, population is stabilizing. And that's good news. But the reality is that the dynamics of population are where the pressures will come from. And one of the dynamics that is really putting a lot of pressure in the planet, in human society as we know it, is really the rate of urbanization. And therefore, we cannot think just about cities, but we have to go beyond city limits and to make sure that this urbanization process is taken in a way that the quality of life, the happiness, the wealth of our environment is really maintained. So there is a lot of issues that have to be dealt there too. Unfortunately, we are still living in a poor world. Although we have done and have gained a lot in the poverty fight, we still have quite a lot of many poor people. And unless we address this core problem, we are not really moving towards global sustainability. You cannot be sustainable if you are poor, and therefore poverty is really one of the key issues that should be kept in the global agenda and in the national agendas. And really, because we are poor, there are also a lot of debates on the nexus. And Hans, you just mentioned this issue of food, of energy, and really, how do we deal with this nexus between water, food, energy? How do we bring the social energy, the social cohesion that we need in order to have a good balance in terms of using the planet resources and the human ingenuity to really make sure that in a few decades from now, we say we are not poor anymore as a planet, as humanity. We are also living in a very unequal world. And I just put one map, I could put many others, but we are in a scientific conference. Really, knowledge, science, technology, innovation are really advancing and coming up with very interesting solutions, alternative solutions that could move us and make us transiting to a more sustainable world. Are those knowledge, technologies, innovative approaches affordable to all? Or do we still have a huge divide? And this divide is not even between countries. Even within countries, we see a lot of those divides. And to make things even more interesting for the debate, we also live in a world that is polar. We are being pushed in several directions. We have, of course, the short-term government agendas, and it's normal. They are elected for a short time, they have to perform, they have to respond to their electorate. But in fact, if we want to move towards a more sustainable path, we have to go to a more long-term vision and commitment. And many times, it's beyond government limits. And so how do you play with these two things and engage the government of today to really lay the stones that will help to build a more sustainable future. Again, this question of certainty and uncertainty. In the case of science, disciplinary science, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary science. Again, do we need both? Can we live with both? So again, always this polarity is pushing us. How do you mobilize people? How do you mobilize sufficient social energy to really have a transformation in behaviors? You need to understand the connections. You need to understand the known connections, and conferences are some of those connections, but there are also hidden connections. So it's not enough. A lot of the decision-making, a lot of the mobilization towards a certain direction of development, it's really happening in hidden connections. And one of the wonderful things about social media is that it's very open and it's very transparent. So we are moving really to channels of communication that could be very important. And also the role, of course, of media on this. Economic interests versus social and environmental issues. Again, it's not about one or another. It's how do you strike the right balance. Political objectives and language. When you are in policy or in politics, you speak in one way. When you are in research, you speak another way. If you are an individual citizen trying to be heard, you use another language. How can we find ways that this language is almost automatically translated between the different stakeholders, and we can build that? And again, this idea of individual and coalition power, and also societal solutions. And I think this is also a very important point that I will come back later. But basically, where are we? And yesterday, again, we spoke about the Anthropocene. So we are living in a geological era where we are the major changing factor in our planet. Now, what can we do? Or are we doing already something? And we are. In effect, there are a lot of good things happening. And allow me to come back to the Planet Under Pressure Declaration from 2012, a major scientific meeting that tried to influence the debate in Rio+20, in the Summit for Sustainable Development in Rio in 2012. And there were, for me, two very important issues. One is this idea of risk, and really accepting that we have sufficient scientific evidence now to say that we cannot continue in the same path that we are having. Otherwise, we are really putting ourselves in a position to get a major emergency at a global scale. But what was very interesting also from that meeting is that because we understand what's happening better, we have capacity to act. And we can do it. And because we are so interconnected, solutions that appear in one place can very rapidly spread and really impact other parts of the globe. And again, the idea of this conference was that we really need, therefore, to think of a new approach of research, more integrative, looking more to development challenges, and really guaranteeing that there is a dialogue between the research community and the public and the decision makers, be it in government, be it in civil society, be it in private firms. Also the idea that if indeed we have a global scale problem, then we also need a global commitments. And so this idea of integrative sustainable development goals came also very strongly from this conference, and also how to make sure that they were designed based on scientific evidence and through an integrative dialogue. And it did pay off, all these processes of involving different stakeholders, because the UN Secretary General report on global sustainability did recommend that it is important to bring all these stakeholders together and guarantee there is a platform for dialogue. And furthermore, they said we need science when we are taking global decisions. So this report also proposed very concretely that the UN Secretary General should find a way to create a scientific advisory mechanism that could advise not only him directly, but all the UN system and also the member states. And so this was a very positive, and we were very happy with this decision, because it did show that finally science was able to communicate better with important stakeholders in terms of global sustainability. And this was confirmed in the declaration of the Rio+20 summit, where again this idea that we needed a scientific advisory mechanisms at global level, and further that we need to invest more in sustainable development assessment platforms, so that we could constantly test, learn, and improve, and really trying to find, there is no one solution, there is no perfect solution, but there is this process of really trying, learning, monitoring, evaluating, improving, do it again, and move towards a more sustainable process. And allow me to remind, again, because we are in a scientific conference, and I see a lot of young researchers here in the room, what late Professor Elinor Ostrom said in Planet Under Pressure, a call really for the scientific community, not to isolate itself, but really to engage with policymakers, with private firms, with society in general, to say, here we are scientists, we can do science, we can produce science, we have knowledge. Engage with us, we are engaging with you, how can we do it, how can we move ahead towards a more sustainable process? And what is beautiful is that science is really changing, and is changing in many ways in the right direction. The first change is that we are really seeing a shift in global influence. Before, it was the North Hemisphere that would have the powerhouses of science, the knowledge production would be concentrated in the North. Today, we are seeing emerging powerhouses in the South. Asia, as a region, has a lot to play with that, and we have seen quite a lot of advances there. So that's really a very good move, because we will need, indeed, knowledge production around the globe if we have to find solutions for the global challenge we have. We cannot have those solutions based in one center of knowledge production. The other finding that is really not so good is that, unfortunately, although we are seeing new powerhouses coming up in science, they are still too few. So we do have a challenge, how to increase the scientific capacity around the globe. And that has to be something that has to be in the agenda, and not something we keep postponing. Another change in the STI landscape is that science is becoming more democratic. And that's a very good change. The access that we have now, the open access to knowledge, the new technologies, information technologies, have allowed people that before had no access to knowledge to start doing that. We have the MOOCs. A lot of universities are putting for free their online courses. Students in places where there are no universities, or universities with less capacity, they can learn from the best through internet. So there are really positive movements. Furthermore, also, science is becoming part of society. I wouldn't say that we have already a scientific culture in our societies, but we do have agencies, organizations that are doing that. We have the science journalists, we have the science museums, the science centers, we have citizens organizations that promote science and scientific knowledge. We have science fairs, we have science in the city programs like. So these are the things that make science more democratic. I would say that we are not fully there yet, but we are moving ahead. Another very important trend for global sustainability is the internationalization of science. It's very rare today to find a research project that is done only inside one country, much less one institution of research. Science is international, and it's going to keep to get more and more international. And that's a very good trend. Another important change, and this is more on the political level, is that there is a growing emphasis in science policies that push us towards more green investments and more green technologies. And again, you mentioned Denmark's green plan. A lot of the countries are doing this. South Korea has a very interesting plan also on that. And around the world, you see governments taking this aboard. But what worries me a little bit on this trend is that we talk only about technology, and we forgot about the people and the social acceptance of these technologies and the right use of these technologies, and the importance that these technologies don't become or don't increase the inequalities of the world. So there are a lot of issues that still need to be added to this very positive trend. So there are other positive trends, and I will quickly go through them. The first one, again, it's a scientific trend, and it's a scientific program, Future Earth. Future Earth is a 10-year research initiative that is really trying to make a new contract between science and society, so that science can indeed support society in moving towards a more global sustainability paths. Trying to look how can we do the transition from a less sustainable to a more sustainable development agenda. How can we make sure that we are constantly forecasting and monitoring the changes and see the risks that are coming and how can we address and finding solutions for that. Really trying to open up more innovation paths towards different ways of developing. And really trying also to fill the knowledge gaps that are there. So it's really a very interesting initiative. It's a global initiative. It's supported by an alliance. UNESCO is part of the alliance, ICSO and many others. And I think the fact that we have today a Future Earth and not several smaller global change programs is really a sign that things are moving ahead and in the right direction. Another one, yesterday we were just in the dinner with Her Excellency, the Minister of Science from South Africa, where the Square Kilometre Array Radio Telescope project was presented. Again, it started at countries competing to receive the biggest, the largest radio telescope. And now there is a coalition. There are 2 countries in the south and several countries around the world that are building together this radio telescope. So from an initiative that appeared to be very isolated became really a large international consortium. We do have an advisory mechanism now for the UN system. The UN Secretary General established the advisory scientific board. We start working with them in the beginning of this year. UNESCO as the Secretariat, our Director General is the chair of the board. So again, from, in effect, 2010, this idea that science has to be more involved with the global debates and the political decisions, giving the scientific support they need, to a reality that we have indeed now a mechanism. We also have now the Sustainable Development Goals being discussed, being debated, being designed, established. And the good thing is that the universality of these goals was not lost in the debate. So it's not goals for the South or the North or Africa or Latin America or Europe. It's for all. They are global. They are universal. Every single country will adhere to these goals. Clearly, a lot of the issues, social, economical issues, are being discussed. What we are not happy yet science is not clearly there. Technology sometimes appears, science, production of knowledge, investment on scientific capacity are not yet there. And we are really hopeful that the Scientific Advisory Board will bring that component to the debate of the Open Working Group. But I believe that we can do more. I don't think it's enough. I think a lot of good things are happening, but we need more. In general, I think if we want to discuss global sustainability, we need to start by how do we define our core scientific questions. And we can't be just the scientists doing that. We have to be in the co-design and the co-production mode. We also need to look at a new approach for research as proposed by Planet Under Pressure. We really need to have more international collaboration. We need to bring capacity where there is not. We need to make it more interdisciplinary. We need even to move towards a more transdisciplinary kind of science. We also need to look at the policy frameworks. They are enabling processes, and yesterday this discussion was quite strong on that, how policies can indeed affect trends and ways of doing things. And clearly we have to look at science policies as structural policies, transversal. They are not top-down. They need to be bottom-up too, in order really to create this culture of science or scientific culture in society that really brings this possibility to move together towards a more global sustainable path. We also need to transform our institutional setups. It cannot be the traditional one anymore. You probably will see more and more a kind of networking kind of structures where you may have an institute that has 5 components in its basic secretariat. Because that's the nature of the science we need to do today. We can't stay in one place and think that we can produce knowledge that will be applicable elsewhere in the world. So really also to break this sense or this normal way of doing things. Now let me go to more specific, and I have 5 points there. The first one is this idea of the science policy interface, the meaning of the S. When we speak about science and policy, the S is really science only. But we like it or not, normally the interaction is opportunistic. A policymaker needs some scientific evidence to take a decision or to confirm his own decision, will contact a think tank, a scientific think tank to get that. A scientist needs some support to move towards a more complex research agenda, will contact a policymaker to have it. But really, unless we move and bring another S to the interface, and that's the society, those interactions will be always opportunistic. We need society, because it's really the citizens that will move. As we know, policy and politics are moved by people, are moved by, like Anne Glover said yesterday, by emotions. So we do need to have the emotions, the commitments of people, of society, in order to really make sure that there is a dialogue where science indeed can influence policymaking processes. So maybe what I'm proposing is that we need a more society-centered approach. Then instead of a science-centered approach, or instead of a policymaking-centered approach. So we need to bring society into the process in the meaningful way. We also need to make sure that marginalized groups are incorporated. We need to eradicate poverty. We need to give equal rights and voices to the voiceless today. So it's not just society on an elitistic point of view. It's really involving every single human specimen in the planet to say this is the way to go, or maybe it's not the way to go, and where should we go? So really a full engagement of society in policymaking. In order to do that, I believe that there are some characteristics. One is that effective structures to give policy advice or scientific advice to society and to policymakers, they have to be across-scale interventions. We were discussing this morning. It's, of course, I can do something locally, and this is wonderful. But I will need also to do something regionally, and I will need to do something also globally. Because it's all these scales together that will make the transformation rapid enough to really have impact. Also, this idea that structures for scientific advice have to have mechanisms to involve diverse groups of stakeholders. Because policymakers will look at their electorate for decisions. Private sector will look to their markets. Society will look to their needs. So you do need to have this idea that although we can say that this scientific advice for decision-making, you need a diverse group of stakeholders. And also, science is not just about scientific evidence to take a decision. I think science should also inform how you design decision-making processes. Because that's where you are more effective. If I don't understand who are the stakeholders that will be affected by some decision I take in the beginning of the process, I will not be able to consult them, because I will only realize that at the end of the process, and the lost opportunity is there. So science should give scientific evidence to take decisions, but it should also influence the way we design decision-making processes. And we are doing that in science. We are changing that. The co-design, the co-production mode that, for instance, Future Earth has, is really scientific evidence designing the way scientific questions in this program will take place. So we can do that also in other decision-making processes. And it has to respond to development challenges and should build capacity. We don't have enough scientific capacity around the world. We have poles of excellence, but they are not everywhere, as I showed you before. Language. How can we communicate complexity? And that's really a huge challenge. And I see someone that made a question yesterday about the role of scientific journalists. Help us to deal with complexity and to explain complex issues in a way that people understand the complexity, but also the possible solutions that science is bringing. So communication, a very important issue, and also the issues covered. Again, yesterday in one of the lectures, someone said, but whose question are you addressing? And we do need to think about that. As a scientist, I address the question that interests me. And fair enough, it's good. Sometimes I discover interesting things, sometimes I don't. But if you want science to influence, to give the basis for global sustainability, you do have to think whose question and what's the time scale of that question. And governance models, how to address the different needs. And as my husband says, please keep the question alive. Don't let it go down. Don't have a quick fix. Have a fix, start implementing, but keep the question alive. Because that way you can put different perspectives and different needs in the research you do. The second point is what kind of knowledge production we need for sustainable development. And again, this idea that we need a much more integrative, the different sciences together, the different disciplines, natural science, engineering, social science, humanities, really working together and finding ways of producing the knowledge we want. And we are seeing that trend. We really have a paradigm shift already, and Future Earth is a very good example of that shift. But what is very worried is that this new way of producing knowledge, again, the production is unevenly distributed. And I'm from Mozambique. I worry that Africa, once again, it's out of the picture. So we do need to do more in building African capacity in science. So we need more research programs like Future Earth to bring the global scientific community together. We also need the capacity building programs, and we need research funding that is a little bit more flexible. And it's also global. The tendency of research funding, and at UNESCO we are doing a study on that, how is the research funding changing, or changed in the last 5-10 years. And what we are finding is that a lot of the funding is becoming national. But we are addressing global issues, and we need to engage globally the human society in order to transform, in order to move towards a more global path, a more sustainable path. So how can the research funding becoming more and more national, more close, more focused in certain areas, when we need to have a more open kind of research? So this is a huge area that we need to improve. Allow me to bring quality education for all. Education is fundamental. We need education really to have a transformation of mentalities. We need education, quality education for all, to build the technical and the scientific skills we need for the challenge we have ahead. We need education to build the conviction and the commitment to pursue sustainable development. And it's not just education, it's really quality education for all. So what are the things? We need to put the teachers in the center of this transformation of education systems. Higher education institutions, universities have a huge role to play in really designing teacher training programs that allows the teachers really themselves to be transformative agents. We need to revise and develop more relevant curricula for the reality that we are living. An uncertain world, we need to teach again the capacity, or we need to learn as humans again, the capacity to deal with the uncertainty. We have to involve schools more and more in monitoring the changes. We have a program in UNESCO called the Sandwatch program. The students, they monitor the change in their coastline. We use it for schools that are near the coast. And it's amazing to see, not only they become much more interested in science, and science classes are much more fun because they are done in the beach, but they become also activists in protecting their own environment because they can see, they talk to the fishermen, they talk to the national authorities, and they can see what is happening and becoming more active. And of course, also important to build these meta-competences that allow people to self-transform. So there is a lot to be done in education. The fourth one is networks. Why do we need networks? And throughout the conference and around, you see networking here, networking there. They are fundamental. They really give us the capacity to deep understand the factors that are influence global policy-making processes. If the center of knowledge is only one, you don't understand all the factors. But if you have a network spread around the globe, you can understand better. You have the capacity to analyze the impacts of those policies across scales again. Remember, we are in an interconnected world, in a globalized world. Local decisions have global impacts. Global decisions have local impacts. You need the networks to do that, to have this across-scale analytic capacity. Also, what is unique in each of them and how to bring them together to have the full picture and really bring more capacity to alternative policies. So we are more used to institutional networks. Scientists network naturally with each other. We do the same work, we like each other, we see each other in the same meetings. It's easy for us to network. But we need to go a step above. We need to bring the institutions they belong to into these networks, because it's more than sharing towards a common research agenda. It's more human capacity, human resources, laboratories, synergies, because they will make institutions grow by interacting with each other. and really bringing a more sustainable way of doing research. So institutional networks are very important. But for me, it's one step, but it's not the very final one, I would say. We need more a network of sustainable developments. And for that, each institution, research institution, university, should be embedded in their own society. They should work with schools, they should work with governments, with private sectors, with civil society, really engage with society at large. Making really this partnership that is productive. Supporting the endogenous capacities that any society has, and really using diversity to sustain development. And even if you think of networks of institutions that are indeed embedded in their own societies, each of them, something very interesting happens, and this is the power of science, that sometimes we don't use well. Science brings societies together. If indeed science is providing alternative solutions for a better life of those societies. So by having networks of institutions that are themselves embedded in their societies, you also bringing these societies together. And therefore, it's better, it's easier in a way to have a more meaningful global discussion. So what are the key actions that we could do? One is really try to have some funding to do this. We have a lot of funding for centers of excellence. Centers of excellence is one institution. We need several institutions. A network of excellence will need to have centers of excellence inside. But not all the institutions will be in the beginning of the network centers of excellence. They will grow their excellence in science as they network with the better performing centers. But if we keep investing only in centers and not in networks, I think we are missing a big opportunity. Also, using sites that already exist to build these networks. UNESCO, we have a huge network of our marine biosphere reserves, more than 500 sites in under 20 countries. Using this existing network to build scientific networks that bring society with them. Men and biosphere reserves, they have men and women inside the reserves. It's precisely this interaction between environment and people. So it's a very good example. Another example is the SKA project I showed you with South Africa and Australia. So there are already existing networks, we need to do more. We also have a lot of international platforms and intergovernmental groups. We have the IPCC, sorry for extra P, the IP-Best platform. Can we use these existing groups to build the networks and use the networks that they have in order to produce their assessments? Finally, we also need an enabling environment. We need leadership that builds common vision and that have the public good as a main issue. And a lot of young people here, I really hope that your leadership style is going really to give a different kind of energy, and really the public good becomes very important. Ownership, participation, people-centered development, autonomy, being able and autonomous to take the right decision, having the knowledge to do that. Conviction. We need to be convinced. We need to say, no, no, no. Maybe I don't have the right answer, but I know it's somewhere there, so I'm going to move in that direction. Maybe I don't know everything, but I know enough that I have to act. Commitment, funding, the type of funding mechanisms. Really commitment to change and to really make science, technology, and innovation to work for sustainable development. Relearning capacity. We need to know, we need to unlearn, to learn new things. And we need to bring research into education so that the education is relevant. It's the education we need for the future. So it's very important to have also these mechanisms. And of course, ethics, and really having true partners. The global challenges we face, we are all equal there. So we need also to be equal in finding the solutions, because otherwise it's not going to work. So in conclusion, can we act on it? Can we act on these 5 points that I bring for discussion? Can we really make sure that the interface is science, policy, and society, and that we have inclusion in this interface? Can we really transform the way we produce knowledge so that we have a more solution-oriented kind of approach? Can we really guarantee quality education for all? And really, who knows, maybe initiating a new global science initiative, education initiative. Can we really make sure that networks for sustainable development are really there? Can we use what exists and do it? Can we build this enabling environment? I truly believe we can. We just need to act more and more and more. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Lydia. Please take a seat. Now we have some minutes for questions and discussions. And in a very short while, I'll open the floor for questions to Lydia. But just let me start by asking you a question, Lydia. From your very interesting presentation, it's obvious that you put a lot of hope to the development on the dialogue in the triangle between politics, politicians, the citizens, and then science, of course. What I learned from a keynote presentation we heard yesterday from a CEO of one of the very big, at least in Danish scale, big Danish companies, Novozymes. They actually, in that company, also use sustainability as a driver for business development. They actually make life cycle analysis of their new product types and uses that actively in their development. And the reason why, as you told us, was that this is actually a demand from some of their very big business customers. You mentioned Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Unilever as examples of very large companies that now are actively asking for sustainable products into their portfolio. So, do you also see that the business community should play a role in this dialogue, or do you think that the business community in the future is also going to take a more, you could say, positive role in the global discussion on sustainability? So should they actually be included not only in the triangle but in the square?
No, they definitely are included, because I see the business community in 2 aspects. I see them on the policy, and I see them on the society level too, and in effect, they are also on the science, because you have a lot of major companies doing top research, and very important research for global sustainability. So they are there. They definitely are there. And just to say that I agree, that there is a movement, really. Unilever decided that they would be sustainable, and they have a sustainability plan, and really investing, and not only them, but also their suppliers of raw materials and and things that they need to produce their product. So you do have already a large number of very important companies moving more towards a sustainable approach to their production. And the reason they are doing that is because it's good business. It's good business because they will be keeping working and having the material they need to produce, and they will have the customers. So today, sustainability, global sustainability, is really starting to be part of the fabric of some major companies. So clearly, I agree absolutely with you, and maybe I can think of a square and put also business there. But I really think they are, in effect, in the three corners, because they do research and development, they have policies that are very important, and they have impact in global sustainability, and they are also in the society, because they also have an interaction, a very strong interaction with the market. So clearly they are there.
Are they also included in the global debate on this?
Yes, they are also included in the global debate. Sometimes not very easy. I remember when we were organizing Planet Under Pressure, we had some private companies with us, and some of them quite large, but maybe not enough in numbers. And that's why with the Stockholm Environmental Institute, we did a few months later a corporate seminar, precisely bringing more leaders, corporate leaders from Sweden to really discuss some of the findings of Planet Under Pressure and how private companies could indeed also take some of these key messages on board. So definitely they are involved. They were in Rio Plus 20. And I think what you are seeing also, there is a new generation of CEOs that understand how important it is to make sure that global sustainability is in their own fabric. So that all their plans, all their staff, all their products can be labeled in that way. But again, like in science, like in policy making in terms of governments, even in society, there is a lot to be done yet. I didn't really talk so much about the private sector, but definitely there are things that need to be there still, and a more engaged private sector. And I do hope that some of the sustainability group that brings a lot of companies together and a lot of initiatives from the private sector will be really strengthened and having a higher impact.
Questions, please? We have a mic or two, I believe. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Gordon Dalton from the International Consortium of Research Staff Associations. A question, Lydia, what do you think the role of young researchers are in science policy, in young researchers in the new emerging economies, and these new research, networking associations for young researchers?
Honestly, I think they have a key role. It's really the transformation that will have to happen fully in science will come from young researchers. And the good news is that young researchers have much more capacity to be interconnected and to be mobile than we had in our generation. Young researchers studied or had experiences in different parts of the world. They know other young researchers all over the globe. They speak more than one language. They have internet, they have chat, they have social media to interact. So really, the full transformation, I think, has to occur from young researchers. And because of that, and this is something in UNESCO we believe strongly, it's why they need to be more involved in the debates on science policy. That's why we need to reflect on careers, research careers, where mobility, capacity to work in different environments should be a very strong part of careers advancement. The capacity to communicate science, it's a very important skill that I hope young researchers are getting more and more able to than we were before. So definitely, I think there is a strong importance that we nurture the young research community and that involve them also more in these new initiatives. Like in Future Earth, there are some goals, how much young researchers we will be able to involve in the different goals. Because that's fundamental, that they are there, because they have this capacity to do things in a different way. Like any young people, but more so because you are the best trained ones. So you also have the knowledge with you to really make a difference.
We have a question over there. And maybe also a microphone.
Predazzi, University of Torino. As a former university teacher and as a former organizer of an ESOF of an ESOF in 2010, I was impressed by your statement about education and quality education. Now, if I can oversimplify things, in my view, that leads naturally to what is known today as the third mission of the university, meaning researchers and society and school, and basically these three actors should act together. Now, is UNESCO actively or somehow foreseen to be active in promoting the third mission of the university? And if so, can you give us some detail?
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, congratulations on the Torino one. It was my first ESOF experience, and as you can see, I keep coming. So you did very well in Torino, and thank you for that and for that commitment, and also for that question. Clearly, universities, and that's why I mentioned higher education institutions, universities and their role in really impacting the way education is going on, but also in this interface between research and researchers and society. Principally because in many, many countries, most of the scientific and research capacity is indeed inside universities. So universities have to connect with society and make that transformation. Just as an anecdote, when we start in Mozambique our reflection on the higher education system in the country, we had all these meetings, discussing higher education, the importance of it, the relevance, the kinds of programs the country needed in several parts of the country. And at the time, most of our universities were in Maputo city. And what was interesting was one of the questions we asked to the Maputo group was, if the universities disappeared overnight, what kind of problems Maputo city would have? What would they miss? And what was interesting, the first reaction was, well, we would have more parking in a very big plaza downtown where the university stays, much more parking, an easier way of connecting. And the rector of Eduardo Mondlane was there. And of course, I had just moved from being the deputy vice rector of academic affairs to minister, so I was also guilty on that answer. But it's precisely that. They wouldn't feel or missing this interaction between professors, students, society. That should be part of university. What do we do in UNESCO? One of the things we are doing in UNESCO, in higher education, is really these debates. It's how to make these things debatable, how to bring best practices, how to discuss career, academic career processes, what ranking today means. When you say this is a top university, what are the drivers and the indicators that tells you that you are a very good university, a top university or not? And really bringing these other indicators. Of course, you need excellent science. That has to be there. But you need more than that. You need excellence learning environments for the students, for the lectures themselves. You need excellent contacts and interfaces with society. So this is basically what we do. We don't intervene directly with universities unless a country, a university comes to us and said, can you help us to debate where are we going as a university? In fact, I'm now in Uruguay, moved from Paris to Uruguay, and I have already a request from the University of the Republic in Uruguay to really bring a set of international experts to precisely discuss what kind of university they need to be done, what are the pillars, what are their main goals if they want to be a development university and these kinds of things. So we do a little bit. You could say that we can do more, but at least we are engaged on the dialogue.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Madam, I am Professor Faj Kuzunovic from University of Zenica in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But besides academic career, I had the opportunity as a non-career ambassador to stay one tenure in Pakistan and one tenure in Norway.
Okay.
So, if we compare these two countries as representatives of developing countries and developed countries, the same strategy will not work on grassroots level on the same way.
Of course.
I fully agree that centers of excellence are definitely the best way to promote and to sustain science everywhere on the globe. But can you diversify the strategies, especially when it needed to be applied on grassroots level in the different types of societies and countries, and even, let's say, war-torn countries, like my country, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I would like to hear a few words on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you for that, because definitely that was not my intention. I don't believe that the same strategies work everywhere. What I'm saying is you have to have strategies everywhere. They don't have to be the same, but they have to be there. You cannot think that if Norway is a very good strategy to really bring science, to inform their society, their decision makers, their companies, and so on, you also need to have in Pakistan, and in Bosnia, and in Mozambique, in order for it to work. We can't afford anymore to have things happening in some places, and other places are forgotten places. And that's why I was calling for this need to build the scientific capacity everywhere. The strategies you use to build that capacity, they will differ, definitely. Because each country is a country in itself. Inside a country, you have many small countries. And so even inside the same country, you will use different strategies. And also different strategies to engage society. So context is very important. It's fundamental. So I'm sorry to all if you understood from my presentation that the strategies should be the same everywhere. No, 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 no. They will be different, they should be different, but they have to be there. And they should be working together in order to build this global perspective and action.
I believe we have room for another question or two.
Yes, there is someone there.
Yes, I was wondering about, oh, I sound too much.
Please introduce yourself.
I was wondering about the science behind all what you said. Seems to me that there's a lot of anecdotes and good intentions, but maybe we are lacking some indicators, some real numbers about how is this going to happen. For example, about the question of business, there's a lot of companies that still think that the business of business is still business, and they are not going any good. They are kind of unethical in thinking that. So I was wondering how many of those things are already having scientific indicators to let us know that they are actually working, that they are actually really starting and heading the way they are supposed to head.
Yes, we do monitor. In fact, UNESCO is now producing the next UNESCO Science Report. And it's a report that measures the changes in the landscape in science, technology, and innovation. And for the first time, we are hoping that we can also include a chapter on business and trying to see how they are changing their strategy. As I mentioned during my presentation, we are also studying how research funding is changing and what are the implications of those changes to this kind of scientific agenda. With these changes, can we have more Future Earth programs like, or it will be more national kind of programs? So we are saying international collaboration is fundamental, but if you have national systems to fund research and you have less global research money, how are we going to do this? So indeed, this is something that organizations like UNESCO, like ICSO, like OECD in their science department, these are the things we do. The European Union, they also have Eurostat, and they look at different indicators. And that's why I said, these are things that are happening, and they are there. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. We need to have to fight and continue fighting and talk and mobilize and do things and challenge people and bring new ideas. But definitely there are some ways of measuring, and there are some instruments. The UNESCO Science Report will be launched in November next year. It will cover regional modifications, but as I said, we are hopefully will be able to have some new chapters that really look in different perspectives to the changing landscape in science. But there are other organizations also that produce at regional level also indicators. But you are right, we need to monitor. We need to monitor to make sure that, like again, you don't have to know it all. You have to know enough to act, and then you have to monitor and evaluate, and then you improve, and you learn again, and new things will come, changes will occur. So the strategy will have to be changed again to take you to a different level. So it's a constant process of implementing, acting, monitoring, revising, learning again, bringing new knowledge, and a very dynamic process. And that's why dialogue is so important, so that you don't miss your evaluation.
Thank you. One last question.
Hi, Abdul Sheikh from the University of Luxembourg. You talk about involvement of scientists, young researchers in the new society. And I think I'm a young researcher, which I think. I'm looking for trying to involve myself with UNESCO and looking for an active opportunity. But to my knowledge, I failed. There was no chance to involve and contribute my expertise to UNESCO. Are there any future efforts for UNESCO?
There are several ways, and we have several figures that you can work with us. One is what we call the interns. If you are a master's student or a PhD student, you register yourself in a website. Normally, you identify the area you want to work. You contact directly with the staff working on that area. But then you have to go to the website and go through the process. And we have quite a few interns, some in the master level, some on the PhD level. Some countries also have what we call the associate experts. They are normally longer term. You have finished at least your master's, sometimes your PhD. And the national commissions of UNESCO, they have some of them have funding to send these young researchers to stay with us 1 year, 2 years, up to 4 years. It could be headquarters, could be any place in the field. The same for the interns. We have interns everywhere where we have an office. And then there is a third engagement, that is the young professionals. Usually that means that you are starting a career in the UN system, and you can start through UNESCO. And that again depends on the countries. There are countries that have these young professionals programs, and you apply and you compete. It's a competitive base. And then you are employed as a young professional in UNESCO, and then you start your career there. Finally, and we start very recently this, we are also now part of the UN voluntary system. So you also can work for UNESCO in a voluntary basis. And again, you will have an expertise, you will identify the area you want to work, and clearly you can apply as a voluntary to UNESCO. So this is to work with us and to share the way we do things, to be part of what we do. We have programs for young researchers. And the one I would like to mention is the WAYS network. That is really a network, a global network of young researchers that really share with each other how to do things better, how to advance in their career. And what UNESCO does is to make sure that when we organize the World Science Forum every 2 years, we have sessions that deal with young researchers' concerns, and WAYS are normally the organization that organize those events. And we have WAYS regional, so we have WAYS Europe, WAYS Africa. We are launching in November WAYS Latin American and Caribbean. But they have a global secretariat. So when we finish, give me your email. I can also put you in contact with WAYS. But then you have all the other possibilities to engage with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we are about running out of time, and I would like actually to say thank you to Lydia Brito. In your very interesting presentation, I noted that you put weight on the opportunities and the solutions. And from my notes, I see that you had these 5 action avenues. Science should actually actively give advice to politics. We should focus more on building up the right types of knowledge. It's important with quality education for all, and we should build up networks of excellence. And then you had a call for an enabling environment, and not least leadership in this issue. I think these are issues that we all agree to, and we find very important. And with that, I would like to thank you very much, and please join me in thanking Lydia Brito.
Thank you very much.